Getting fluent with jazz is not a simple, smooth journey for many people, much as it might seem like it should be, and it might feel like it is for everyone else. So if you're in that position where you just want to get some freedom and improvise and not play the same tunes the same way each time, not just remember the last one or two tunes you played and be playing like a robot, then this one's for you. If we haven't met before, then my name is Sean. I've been teaching jazz for around 3 decades, about 46,000 one-to-ones. But these days I share my approach on jazz skills for members where I train them to get fluent and beyond. So if you want real targeted help, then come and see us there. Now, this one is not going to be about lots of playing demos and things to play. I have over 160 videos on YouTube, so you can watch me doing all those sorts of things and learn from those. This one is about approach, which is the biggest thing that's stopping people, the biggest thing that's slowing people down is not which notes to play and, is it this lick or that phrase or these moves or those modes. That's not what it is. That's a part of it. What's really stopping people is these three main things. So today I'll just be speaking from the heart and running through these three things to share with you the best I can, what will help you along your journey. Number one, people coming from a classical background trying to transfer their learning approach, not even realizing that's what they're doing, kind of subconsciously, and superimpose it onto jazz just by changing the material, as if it's magically going to turn into jazz played with freedom without having to fixate on sheet music and be able to improvise. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't, okay? With jazz, you're not going to read your way, whether it's reading music notation, although that's not evil, but you're not going to read your way to jazz fluency, whether it's that or reading a book. It's not an academic subject. It's a skill-based language. So that's very much how I approach it. It is a language that needs to be learned and spoken. That doesn't mean you never have anything in front of you, but if anything, you should be learning to read from chords, not just trying to play transcriptions. You probably know that already. If you're trying to play the same approach that you learned in classical lessons, which is my job is for you to tell me exactly what to play, and if I did it correctly, then we can put a check mark on it and move on to the next exercise. It's not that. It's what are you absorbing linguistically from this? So, for example, in the key of F, here are our chords 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Maybe you've played in the key of F, but do you know quickly enough that that's F major 7, G minor 7, A minor 7, B flat major 7, C dominant 7, D minor 7, and E minor 7 flat 5? Do you know that this is 2, 5, 1 in F, G minor 7, C7 to F major? Are you still calling this C major 7 instead of C7? If you see G minor 7th written on your music, and whether you're in the key of F or not, but certainly if you are in the key of F, are you expecting C7 next and F major next? And there are many, many examples of that. That's just a 2-5-1 in jazz. Second chord of the scale, fifth chord of the scale, and the root. Can you see what I mean by, yes, I can get people to play G minor 7, C7 to F major, and they can remember where their fingers go, or they can know that this is the minor third of G. This is the fifth, and this is the flat seventh. That's going to help them. Because later on, if I say, okay, let's play a phrase from the third and descend the scale, and we can't have those conversations, and you don't know where the seventh is, for example, without having to think about it, then the language isn't being learned and the real rudiments aren't being practiced. And furthermore, you're not going to be able to hear progressions, which is really what it's about when you're listening to music. So you're not going to feed yourself from outside either. It's just a couple of examples. So what I've done on Jazz Skills is create a developing fluency course before you even enter the main members area, which teaches you all these skills and gives you tracks to practice with, lessons to work with. So it's not like I never want you to read anything, but we want to train you not just to be using re skills, what I call re skills. That means either reading or remembering, but not processing the language as the music goes past. That's what we want to train you to do. So that requires not just the right information and the right help, which is rarely found in jazz books and courses, if I'm really honest, at the level of getting people fluent. It also involves your full participation in trying to work in a way that you're becoming your own teacher at least half the time. You're becoming me sat next to you. asking you those questions and making sure that you're not just playing like a robot, but you're really not just understanding, because that's another thing that holds people back. The idea that I understand first and then I play. Yes, some of that is true, but sometimes you have to play in order to understand and train yourself. But are you really getting the language from your playing? Even with tunes, which we'll come on to next, are you using tunes to learn the language of jazz or only to play tunes? Which brings us on to number 2, thinking that playing tunes equals learning jazz. Now, I'm not saying that playing tunes has nothing to do with learning jazz, but some people only have the strategy of, I'm going to try and play this tune beginning to end, still sound like a robot, still not know which progressions are in there, not understand anything about the language, be playing a tune in, let's say, B flat. Let's take Everything Happens to Me. So I'm only going to play a tune because I like it. But I don't know that I just played 2-5. We did that in F, and now we're doing it in B flat. It can go to 3 and flat 3 diminished. This is language. Now, you might not know what I'm talking about, but hopefully you're getting the idea that there are functions and language that come up in all the standards, and that actually that tune would be way too difficult for somebody that's just getting into jazz. Teachers often get this wrong. Student says, I'd really love to play this song. So the teacher goes, okay, that's not how you learn language and skills, right? That's just how you learn one tune. What I mean when I say thinking that playing tunes equals learning jazz is that you can be focused just on playing a tune, but not bringing skills to it, just trying to play a masterpiece, play the right things at the right time. And therefore you won't be speaking the language the way a jazz musician does, because you can't possibly ever do anything else with it, because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what the language is. You don't know that. Even that is 2-5 in B flat, C minor 7th to F7. Some people playing a tune like that will play the B flat major scale wrong, or they won't know that this is chord 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 in B flat, and that there are all sorts of other chord progressions that lead to those chords. And once you learn this about jazz standards and find a good way to practice it, which is what we do in our Developing Fluency course on jazz skills, you will not struggle to know what you're doing anymore, and you will start to understand and feel that whilst you play. Not have a conversation about it before you play and then say, yeah, but I know this stuff and I still can't play. We have to bridge that gap between knowledge and skills for many people, because many people have already overloaded themselves with jazz theory and still can't play. We have to find ways to make sure you're processing that information, but turning it into skills that can be applied across your playing. What I don't want for you is for you to only be able to remember the last 1 or 2 tunes you played because you're playing them like a robot, just to get them down and give yourself some entertainment. And then you learn tune number 4 and 5 and you can't play tune number 1, 2, or 3 anymore. Or you can't possibly do it another way. If I change one chord, the whole thing falls apart. Well, then how do we learn to change some chords up and do some other stuff with it, right? Because you've got to learn it from language, because just memory and just reading crumbles very quickly in jazz. It's not like learning Chopin and going and getting the score and just playing the right notes at the time. To be honest, even that music isn't about that. It becomes that within a classical lesson format very often, but it really wasn't about that. You know, people like that were improvisers. They even had figured bass, just like we have the Roman numerals for things like 1-6-2-5 in C, 1-6-2-5, and the bass player might say, a different kind of 6 there, but whatever. They did that in classical. They called it figured bass, and they used to improvise around Roman numerals. It's kind of lost that, but it doesn't mean it's not important to understand the language and to be speaking the language as you play, not just to write an essay at university. So what should you do? A focus on chord progressions, learning to become the piano player in the band. If you just give me a chord progression, I can play in the band. I can do my job. I can contribute to the music. If you just give me the melody, I can't do that if there's a sax player there, because that's their job. So understanding that your job, your function, is to know chord progressions, know their functions, have different things to do with them, not just be able to play 2-5-1 this one way, but to be able to play inversions. It's just inverting some chords so that the notes can be in different orders. But again, people do that within their classical grade system in the UK. They may play a D minor triad in inversions, but they have no idea how to connect a D minor 7th to a G7 in different ways. Or that you can use that creatively in accompanying yourself or other people. It's just playing inversions. I opened up my chord types a little bit there, can't help it, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. And when you make your playing skills focused, then the tunes take care of themselves. Now, the third biggest drawback and mistake that people make is focusing on style, not substance, and not knowing the difference. So we've talked quite a lot about substance here already, which is your chord progressions, your keys. Do you know your chords through keys? Can you name the chords while you play? So if you did have a 2-5-1 in C, for example, can you say D minor 7, G7, C major 7? And can you say in F, G minor 7, C7 to F major 7? Now, if you can't do that, test yourself. Most people who join Jazz Skills can't do that until I show them ways to practice it and give them fun ways to do it with tracks and lessons and stuff. If you can't do that, then it shows to me that the chord names, they're not going through your head as you play. It's just becoming a shape for your hand. Then, for example, if I say to you, I've got ways of putting movements in those chords, something like, unless you play from a point of language where what you've got is solid and can be inverted and you know why and what's where, then you can't start messing with it. It's just fixed one way. So examples of style over substance might be somebody who goes and watches a YouTube video on even the good stuff, like the Barry Harris movements, where they are doing this sort of stuff, right? Fine. But what's the point unless you're speaking language? Who knows how many times I've said the word language in this video already, but hopefully you're getting the point. People think that they're going to improve by learning about rootless voicings. So a typical experience is they'll go to a teacher and say, look, I can do this. I can play all of me. But there's these big spaces. Now, I must be able to do something more than that. And the teacher says, yeah, well, why don't you learn rootless voicings? So people focus on rootless voicings. So they start doing all this sort of stuff. When they don't know, I've had so many people come to me who don't know a C minor 7 to F7 to B flat major. It's 2-5-1 in the key of B flat. But somebody has made them learn the rootless voicing. So a C minor 7 without a C, an F7 without an F, and a B flat major without a B flat, when they don't know the simple chords. It's not that you never decorate something that's not already solid. In fact, the simple chords are beautiful if you just the simple chords are beautiful as well. Let's not go for style over substance. You can play the simpler chords at your level and be part of the band. Now, why am I talking about being part of the band where most of you want to be solo players by the sounds of it anyway? It doesn't mean that you never play with other people, or at least a track, which is what we'll do on Jazz Skills. You can switch the tracks to different keys and different speeds, and it's fun. But without ever experiencing what that swing feels like, without having to listen to the bass player, to play with the bass player, having to find your place in the music with the drummer, you're not going to be able to play beautiful solo piano because you're covering all that stuff on your own and having to do too much. In fact, solo piano is the hardest form of jazz piano playing, and most people begin from there. So it doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn to play in different keys because you're never going to play with a singer who's going to ask you. No, that shows you what you're already doing and to focus on the numbers that are showing you about chords, and it teaches you to learn the piano better and the keys better so that you actually know the original key that you played in better than you could have done. Not just focusing on what you think you actually need, but what the real skills are of a jazz musician. And that's something that isn't getting talked about enough in jazz lessons and jazz education. And I also want you to know one last thing. It's not impossible. It's not magic. I get people every day on Jazz Skills who say things like, I'd almost given up. I've tried everything else and I just couldn't get fluent. I thought I had all this knowledge and I just couldn't understand why I still couldn't play. If you know about fourths and you know about modes and you know about chords through keys and you know about 2-5-1s, and still can't play, there's a difference between knowledge and skills, and a jazz musician must be skilled. That's the important thing. But I really want you to know that you can do it. If you have the passion and the perseverance and you're willing to work hard, then I've got an experience for you. And you can do it. That's the most rewarding part of what I do, actually seeing people go from that to their first jam sessions, to their first gigs, or just having that experience of getting freedom in their playing. And you can do it too. So if it's time to level up your playing and finally get that freedom you deserve, then come and join us on Jazz Skills, where there's a developing fluency course to get you fluent in this language and skilled in it in the first place. And then I'll shift you to the main members area, where we'll talk about voicings and improvisation, accompanying, learn more about tunes and chord movements and all kinds of other stuff, with support from me and a vibrant community too. So thanks for watching. I wish you well with your journey. Don't give up. You can get there. It will seem hard at times, but you can do it.